All right, wonderful. It looks like we have a lot of attendees already here, and I'm sure folks will come in as they can. My name is Julianne Pastula. I'm the Director of City of Detroit's Department of Appeals and Hearings. I just wanted to briefly jump in here and welcome everyone to the Shamrocks and Strategic Success Women on the Rise webinar, moderated by Kirsten Solanowitz. And how did I do, Kirsten?
Not too bad.
Thank you. Right when I started it, I thought that was brave. Um, Kirsten's going to be our moderator this evening. We have a wonderful panel that we're going to have a conversation with women lawyers at different stages of their legal careers. So I will start talking that way, stop talking so the panel can start talking. Thank you everyone for being here.
Hello, everyone. And like Julianne said, excuse me, I'm Kirsten Solanowitz. I am the Vice President for the Women Lawyers Association of Michigan State Board, a past president of the Wayne County region, and the Chief General Counsel for the Detroit Housing Commission. So thank you so much for joining us here today to have this excellent webinar about Women on the Rise. We have 4 incredible panelists here to talk to us about their careers and their insights. To go over the agenda just a little bit, to piggyback on what Julianne said, we're going to do introductions for a little bit. We'll open it up for panel questions from me, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for Q&A. If you want to have any questions, please put them in the chat, either to everyone or directly to myself. If you want to remain anonymous. And then at the end, we'll have a closing with some great takeaways and thank yous. So let's dig right in. So let's start with Rebecca, and please let me know, or let the rest of us know, because I already know, where you went to law school, and then provide a brief description of your career, including where you currently are working and how you ended up there. And you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. I went to the wonderful former law school, Detroit College of Law, which is now Michigan State College of Law. I was also an adjunct there for many years while I was a partner at Barasat, Dunn and Dreiker in Detroit. When I left Barasat, I then went in-house to Quicken Loans, my dream job, senior employment counsel. And my dream job was wonderful, but I wasn't cut out to work quite that much. So I'm now in my actual dream job, and I am, as of 5 minutes ago, the interim was dropped, and I'm the Assistant Dean of Experiential Education and a professor of practice at Detroit Mercy Law, a job that I absolutely love. In my job, not only do I work with students and run 14 clinics and run our externship program, we have a traveling expungement clinic. So I kind of thought I got away from the practice of law, but in the last 2 years, I've done 150 Zoom hearings helping people clean up their criminal record with students involved. So kind of never expected to find myself in the criminal arena. And that's one of the things I just want to mention is always being flexible. Opportunity knocks, and sometimes it comes in voluntold, and then it winds up being, this is a really great thing. So that's a little bit about me. And I teach in the paralegal program at Madonna University. I teach law office management in the fall and law office technology in the winter.
Thank you, Rebecca. Rachel, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Rachel Frank. I graduated from Michigan State University College of Law in 2014. So I've been in practice for about 10 years. I practice criminal defense. I'm a solo practitioner. I've been doing for about 2 years, but practicing criminal defense for my whole career. And I am in Grand Rapids. Were there any other questions I was supposed to answer in that, or is that good?
I think that's good.
Okay.
You covered all of them. Let's see, Alexandra.
Hi guys, my name is Alexandra Luca. I go by Alexa. I graduated from Wayne State University Law School last year. Took the bar in July, passed the bar in October, and now I'm clerking for Judge Haig in the bankruptcy court downtown Detroit. I got this experience as a result of my moot court experiences as well as an internship that I had my 2L year. So I had a sort of non-traditional route that went outside of the traditional, OCI pathway. So I'm kind of here to give an example of basically another way that you can get to wherever you want to go.
Thank you, Alexa. And last but not least,
Hi, my name is Marisa Bandali. I graduated in 2019 from Michigan State. I'm actually Canadian. This is my home province of Alberta. This one I assume all of you can recognize. And so I initially went to Michigan State thinking I would do the dual JD program, which offers you a JD from Canada and from the States. But I actually interned at Bissell, which is a company in Grand Rapids, in my 2L summer. And because of that, ended up just kind of staying for all 3 years at Michigan State and not doing the program. I'm still at Bissell. After I passed the bar, I was hired on full time. So I also had a non-traditional route. I got my internship through a professor. Um, uh, my former boss reached out and was like, "Hey, we need an intern help, please." And so my professor put me forward, and I've been there ever since.
thank you so much, Narisa. So, Rebecca and Rachel, have you seen a change in how you're treated the further you go into your career?
So I started working at a law firm when I was in law school in 1984 as a paralegal. And someone told me, just go in and work hard. And that's what I did. And I never had any issues. I did have one person that was staring at the wrong place in my body, and I dealt with that. But I never really had any issues because I didn't differentiate myself for gender. I can work hard. And over the years, you saw more and more women. I mean, I think there were 8 women in my law school class by the time we got done, more and more women. And a lot of the men realize women know how to get things done. So, you have to be mindful of that because you might get overloaded. But I personally, the biggest change I've seen, and I've been thinking about this since I got this question, is what we have to wear. Because when I started, you were in nylons, heels, and a dress or a skirt suit, and it was a lot, right? If we had all the money we invested in nylon. So now it's interesting. Men will say women haven't made because our professional dress has such a wide range, whereas their professional dress is still going to be a suit and tie. So, I don't know if that's the answer. That I'd be curious to hear what Rachel has to say. She's in a hardcore arena, being a criminal defense lawyer. And so I'm sure she has to be real tough with some of the people she deals with.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's definitely changed. It probably changed once I hit like the 9 year mark. I am cursed with eternal youth. So I got asked a lot if I was an intern, pretty far into my career. Um, so yeah, criminal defense is very male dominated. There's typically only, a couple women in the courtroom, including the judges. Um, so I mean, definitely early on in my career, I would get asked if I was an intern. Sometimes I would get called honey or other names. Not no one was trying to be, rude or mean. It's just, it was hard for anyone to picture, I think, a young woman being in that arena. Um, and so, but I feel like the way I dealt with that was the more confident I got, and the more really comfortable I got. it seems to have dissipated quite a bit. And, it's really, the way I think of it, it's like there may be certain things that male attorneys can get away with in terms of, level of preparation or knowledge. And I feel like women attorneys really have to be very aware of being extra prepared, and also just the way we present ourselves. Because I'm very aware of how I speak in court, how I measure my emotions if I'm cross-examining someone, because it's very easy to be called a shrill woman. Um, Whereas I feel like, maybe male attorneys have a little bit more leeway about being passionate. So that's something that I'm very aware of is, how I'm coming off. And, really kind of having to dim the sparkle a little bit. I'm a really, I like to think I'm a fun person, but just kind of making sure I'm coming off as very serious in the courtroom. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying yes, it's changed. But there are also ways that I feel like I have uh, made that happen. If that makes sense.
Very interesting. And I'm kind of in the middle of everybody's practice timeline. I've been out for just about 14 years now, and I just recently was called young lady. So whatever skincare routine I have, I'm very grateful for, but at the same time, it's completely unprofessional. So I can only imagine how you felt about being called honey or sweetie, etc. when you were at court. It's shaking a little bit sometimes. It throws me off my game when I'm called it. So likewise on the flip side, because Nerissa and Alexa, you both have joined the profession very recently. What are your thoughts? Have you seen, what has your experience been thus far in the transition from the law school setting to the practice of law?
For me, it was pretty interesting because I started working prior to being barred or having a law degree. So there was this level of, will anybody even listen to me? Will they care about my opinions? Will they think worse of me if I ask all these questions? For those who don't know, Bissell, it's a consumer goods company. We make vacuum cleaners and deep cleaners and things like that. So there's a lot of science and technology things that I also needed to learn in order to help advise as to what we could say. But one thing, and this might be just Bissell, it might just be West Michigan companies, but I didn't feel looked down upon because of my age or experience. People really, there's a culture of respect at Bissell, and people were really interested to know what I had to say, and that helped me build a lot of relationships. Another thing is that the law department at Bissell is primarily women. Our general counsel is a man, but most of the people that work with our clients are all, women. So the thing for me that was the most difficult transition was working directly with clients and sort of being at the same company as my clients. That's very different from what you get prepped for in law school. I also had maybe like 2 classes on my area of law, which is marketing law. So I had to learn a lot on the job. So that was the hardest part of the transition for me, was trying to be a competent attorney and giving good advice, business-minded commercial advice, while also kind of trying to pick up what I was missing in that gap from law school as well.
Yeah, so like I said, I've only been practicing for a few months, but I think that the transition from law school to practice now is a lot more similar than I thought it would be. I didn't take a bankruptcy course in law school, but I did the bankruptcy moot court competition that was offered, the national competition. So I learned a little bit there, and I learned as well during my internship. So I find myself during this, career path that I'm on doing a lot more research, and I find myself still learning just like we did in law school, but there's a difference. Instead of researching, the cases and then having discussion on them, I have research, I have discussion, and then I see the cases live. So it brings sort of more of an entertaining element, I wasn't really necessarily the type of person that loved law school and loved going to class. So this transition into my career has been a lot more fun and a lot more entertaining for me. And in terms of the difference in terms of gender, besides the judge, the rest of our chambers is all women. So I haven't really seen, luckily, that sort of difference in the treatment. And I've been very well respected. So
Well, I'm glad to hear that things have shifted over the several decades since Rebecca's been in law school. I know I certainly have seen some shifts, but not necessarily in others. And so I'm curious, and this is a question for all of you. In your opinion, what do you think are the biggest issues that women are facing today in the practice of law? And if you have an example in your life, we want to hear it. So please share.
I think it's that women have too many expectations of them in life. Women, and that's the nice thing about working in higher education is you have flexibility for work-life balance. When I was a partner at a law firm, I worked nights and weekends, and that was before COVID. And you had to be there on Saturday. They wanted to see your face. They wanted to see that you were that committed. And I was, at that time. But you have all these roles, mother, daughter, I had an elderly mother that I had a lot of responsibility for. So it's like people are trying to do it all. And I think women are also afraid to talk about that in the workplace and set the standard for themselves because it's nice. And, we all have been through the superwoman phase, right? And then you crash and burn and you're crying in a corner and someone says, see, she's crying. No, you were away for the weekend and I was the one preparing for the trial. So I think women, we take on a lot. I'm not going to generalize, but for me, I'm a pleaser. So I want to do good work. I want to be there, but then we have to learn how to draw the line. And I think that's the biggest challenge. If you're a litigator, it's hard to draw the line because that fax machine, that delivery of emotion comes and sorry, your weekend plans are canceled. So I think that's, to me, the biggest challenge is that we've got all these things and then, I know someone, her and her husband are both partners. She has all the household responsibility. And she said, I just finally gave up. So she just, it was easier to do it herself. And I think that's another piece of the puzzle that it's often just, I'll just do it myself than try to find somebody to help me so I can get this work done. And it's taken me a long time to learn that lesson, to ask for help to get the work done. So for me, that's what I would say. Too many expectations.
That's a good one. I think for me is similar to what Rachel was talking about. Sometimes I feel like I have to pick a persona. So am I gonna like present myself as like the fun, nice, like, oh, I'm a lawyer, I'm very nurturing, and this is the advice is coming with a joke? Or am I gonna, be like, I'm a firm lawyer and this is my advice? And so there is this like tension that you kind of have to play depending on who you're talking to. Some clients respond to one versus the other, versus like my boss is just him, like he is the one guy the whole time, right? And I think too, uh, we see a lot of work product from other attorneys when, they send demand letters or when they provide other materials, and you're kind of looking at the work product and you're like, are they only getting away with this because they're a guy who's been doing this for the last 30 years, right? Like, this is not good work, but it's, you know, held to be like truth or fact. And it's like, you could easily disprove all of this stuff, but because they're, I don't know, maybe been in my space is usually like more female dominated, but there's like a couple people where you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure like what the value of this work is or what it would be like if a woman had wrote this, what would have happened to her, kind of thing.
That's a really interesting perspective, Narisa.
I will say one other thing based on what Nerissa said, and I totally agree with what Nerissa and Rachel said. You have to be serious, you have to be professional, but you have to be yourself. You really have to be true to yourself. And if you all knew me personally, you'd know that I'm a little goofy. I like to have fun. I like to make people laugh. I like to do different things. And when I first started at a law firm, I was very serious. And one of my colleagues was kind of like me. We were the odd ducks out. And he said, just be yourself and you'll be surprised what happens. And that's what I did. Now, obviously, you're not going to crack a joke in a courtroom or something like that. But I do think a lot of times, and I deal with students all the time, it's okay to be you. And if the place that you're at, it's not okay to be you, then maybe you're not in the right place.
Yeah, I identify a lot with what Nerissa said about what kind of persona attorney am I going to be today, because like early in my career, I felt like I was very focused on being nice. Like, I want to make sure you're comfortable. I want to make sure you're happy and you feel heard. And those things are still very important. And they're some of the things I prioritize is making sure someone feels heard and comfortable. But ultimately, if someone's coming to me, they're coming to me for my knowledge. And so I found that you know, clients really what they really want is confidence, competence, and knowledge. And so I've tried to kind of meld those two beings, um, being, compassionate and empathetic, but then also being competent and confident so that whatever decisions they need to make, they can do that with all the information that they need.
I really resonated with the thing that Rebecca was mentioning earlier with the set of high expectations that we have for ourselves. And I know we're going to speak on it later, but I feel like imposter syndrome was kind of one of my biggest hindrances and concerns during law school, and especially post law school when we were studying for the bar exam. Because at that point, you graduate, you're on your own, you're either studying on your own for the exam or you pick a bar prep program that hands you 10 pounds of material and says, figure it out by July. So it was a lot of doubting myself. And despite, graduating, it was the idea of, I got to this point. How did I get to this point? There's no way I'm going to pass. Like I'm not supposed to be here kind of thing. And I feel like that's something that unfortunately is something that's kind of like a constant thing that people have to tackle and kind of face head on in order to get past it.
It's
I-
an epidemic.
It is, especially amongst women. I think everybody probably in this Zoom room has suffered from imposter syndrome at some point in time. And that's a perfect segue, Alexa, into our next conversation. And why don't we start with you again, in that same vein? Do you have any tools as to how you've gone about trying to combat imposter syndrome, and what advice could you give to the group about what they can do to try to prevent that from affecting their careers?
Yeah, so the time that I felt it, especially the worst, like I said, was during bar prep because everybody was sort of on their own in terms of the studying, and I would study as much as I could. And as soon as I took a break, I would go on social media and see students that were in class with me and they were studying while I was taking my break. So it felt like I was never doing enough. But on one hand, not only do I have that sort of imposter syndrome, but I'm also sympathetic to other people's situations. So I kind of had to put myself in a spot where if someone else was coming to me with the same concerns that I had and was saying, like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't know if I can, pass this. It's too hard. It's too much. I don't belong in this spot where I am. What would I have said to them? And kind of when I view myself as somebody else as opposed to the criticisms that I have of myself, it was a lot easier. If I had a friend of mine saying that they didn't think that they could pass and they were telling me that they're doing the same steps that I am, say, well, of course you can. You've made all this progress. You've made it this far. You graduated. Like, you're supposed to be in this spot for a reason. But there was one phrase in particular that, especially during par prep, that one of my advisors was telling me over and over. And it's like when you get to a certain point and you think that you're not doing enough, you kind of have to think to yourself, you know, if the bar expected anything else of me, nobody would be able to pass, sort of thing. So, you know, if you're putting your best foot forward and you're putting in everything you can, that's all you really can do. And if there's an expectation of anything beyond that, it's impossible, you know, and nobody's expecting you to go beyond your maximum. So,
So I'll mention imposter syndrome. I didn't even know, never heard of it. In law school, I walk out of the torts exam, and some student I don't even really know says to me, "Did you believe there was a snake in that car?" There was no snake, but for some reason, what he's telling me now is somehow the truth. I got the book award in that class. I spent the entire Christmas break breaking the news to my family that I wasn't going to be continuing because I was going to be flunking out. And my brother, who was deceased, but he was a lawyer, he's laughing. And he said, "Oh, you got the imposter stuff, huh?" And he did too. And he was a trial lawyer that was very, very successful. And I said to him, "My gosh, you get up in the middle of the night to prepare." And he goes, "They'll find out that how did I get here?" And just yesterday, I was talking to a deacon of a Catholic church who was getting ready to go do the Ash Wednesday service. And he turned and said to me, "Sometimes I think people in the congregation are going to stand up and say, 'What is this guy doing up here?'" Even he has imposter syndrome. So it's like a lot of people think they're suffering alone, but it's so common. And I think what Alexa said is that preparation is so critical. You can prepare and prepare, and you can't do anymore. Then you just have to take a deep breath and have confidence in yourself. But I tell students, when you're having that moment, and sometimes it is a moment of meltdown, you don't have time for that. So set a timer. I have one, 5 minutes, and that's the 5 minutes. Feel sorry for yourself, worry, say all the things. When that timer goes off, you have to move forward. And I say that because as lawyers, especially I'm looking at Narissa and Rachel in really high stress jobs, you have got to learn how to break it and move forward. Rachel may have an impossible client. He's ruined her morning. She's ruined her morning, but she's got to move on to the next one, right? So that is an important skill to develop, and know that I'm going to guess we all have it. I do. You have crazy things come in your head. I don't know the origin of it, but I think it's that we have such good and high expectations that self-doubt creeps in. And I often go back to that silly snake story. Why did I think he knew more than me when I was crazy studying? But that's just the nature of what we do. So there's an article in the Bar Journal about it, and it's something that's good to be aware of. And like, I love what Alex said about if somebody came to me and said that, what would I say to them? And I think we have to do more positive self-talk to ourselves that you are good, you are worth it, you are the one that's supposed to be here. So I talk about this subject a lot.
I think too, as lawyers, it's very easy for us to fall maybe even extra into the imposter syndrome trap because people are depending on us, and we feel like if, we're not the right person, we've let them down, right? And then that kind of hurts that mentality even more. I have to give quick advice all the time, and so this type of mindset really hurts the way that I can best serve my clients. The way that I try to battle it, think through what I want to say or what I'm thinking, or, is this even right? And then I bounce it off of somebody else. We're not alone in this profession. You're not going to be alone in your own job. Even if you're a solo practitioner, there are other people who are like at the court with you or in this same area or in, you know, for example, the Women Lawyers Association of Michigan. There's always going to be somebody who is you're going to be able to reach out to and say, like, what do you think about this? And usually it's going to be like, spot on, I thought the same thing. Or it'll be, hey, what about this tweak? And talking that out will remind you that you're actually good at this and you are going to be fine. And it will help you kind of get through that block as well.
Yeah, and I mean the thing about imposter syndrome, Alexa, I want to tell you, unfortunately, it doesn't go away. I was hoping like, oh, I'll turn 30 or I'll hit this number of years in practice and it'll go away. It doesn't. But something that I try to remember is that, I definitely don't know everything, but about this particular thing, I know a lot. And, I probably wouldn't, like if my doctor is telling me what to do, I'm not going to question them and say like, well, do you really know what you're doing? No, they went to med school. They took boards. I went to law school. I took the bar exam. Um, and you don't make it through those things without knowing, what you're doing and how to, be a good lawyer and give good advice. But, I also think it's like so important to collaborate all the time. I love bouncing things off people and just, I'm a solo practitioner. But I love talking to colleagues about, cases and, am I on the right track with this? And so I think it's important to balance, uh, to not get a sense of hubris that is going to lead to kind of that, you know, that practice that isn't grounded in preparation and focus and, um, and knowing the things you need to know. But then also recognizing that you're there for a reason. Um, Alexa, I think you hit it straight on. If your friend came to you and said, oh, I feel like I'm not meant to be here, I'm not smart enough to be here, you would say to them, no, of course you are. Of course you're smart. Of course you're great. And so it's kind of like, why can't we give that same affirmation to ourselves? Um, so yeah, that definitely hits home for me, but it has gotten better. So there's hope.
I agree. I think we as women sometimes put such high expectations on ourselves and we speak so poorly to ourselves about our abilities when in fact we have sometimes better abilities than most people in the room. I think it's that perfectionist tendency. I have it all the time. I'll say something and then an hour later I'll think, oh, I don't think that they understood it in the way I wish to convey it. And now I wish I said it something differently, or perhaps they misinterpreted it. And it's like, no, I knew what I was talking about. I know exactly, and if they have questions, they can come back and ask. And that's the beautiful part about the law. Sometimes, at least most times, there's always a way to fix it. So, um, you can always go back and change it. So looking back now, and I know Alexa, you've been out a few months, and Nerissa, the same thing, but especially for Rebecca and Rachel, looking back on your career path, what do you wish you had done differently, if anything at all? Or what do you wish you could do in the future? And so Nerissa and Alexa, maybe think of that question while we're hearing from Rebecca and Rachel about the past and the future.
I don't know what I've thought about that one too, and I've done everything that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I wanted to defend companies in employment law. I did that. I wanted to teach. I wanted to be in-house. So I can't say I would change too much, but I do want to go back to one thing that Rachel said, which is about imposter syndrome. She is an expert in her field. So if you wanted to know one thing I would do differently, I would have never taken that family criminal case. It was a marijuana possession case that they begged me to take that case. I had never had a case like that. So I told you before, I over prepare. I was reading everything, but I wasn't prepared because I wasn't a practitioner in that area. I was able to fake my way through a little bit of it, except that particular day was law day in Plymouth, and the entire 8th grade of Plymouth, Michigan was there, and my client was the only marijuana possession on the docket. So I guess what I would say is if I did anything differently, I would constantly stay in my lane. I've gotten out. I'll do a will. I've done other things. That's when all the stress and anxiety comes because you don't know what you're doing. So if I had to do anything different, I would refer a lot more people away from me, and not get myself in a position where, Rachel's the expert in criminal law, but she's not going to probate an estate. And I think that's a really important lesson, because when you commit, and then I think another element of imposter syndrome is, look at the law, look at the volume of stuff. Narissa's in-house counsel dealing with all kinds of federal laws. A lot of people don't realize with each federal law comes like 1,000 pages of regulations, and it's overwhelming. Did I miss something? Did I find the right case? So I think keep building on your own area of expertise is the best advice I could give. And that's the one thing I would change. Although I do love telling the marijuana possession story, I have to admit. But walking into a courtroom, not a criminal lawyer, with the entire 8th grade and an angry judge, luckily it was a cousin, and everything was kind of, the judge practically threw the guy in jail. But so that's my advice. Keep in your lane, keep building your own area of expertise.
Yeah, so I don't think there's really like anything I would change. But this brings up, an interesting something that I wanted to bring up, which is that the thing that you like, let's say you go to law school and you want to do a certain type of law. It's okay to change your mind. So when I went to law school, I wanted to do human rights work, asylum seeker work, but just broadly, I wanted to help people. And then that kind of evolved into doing family law. And so my entire law school, all my electives were family law. Took matrimonial law, a bunch of other family law electives. I did the Chance at Childhood Clinic at MSU Law. I got out, started practicing family law. Absolutely hated it. And it's okay to recognize this is not my thing. And it turns out, I found where I'm supposed to be, and I found my calling in criminal defense, and I'm so happy with where I am because it's not the exact thing I pictured, but I feel like I've still been able to help people. And so I'm really happy with where I went with where I ended up and the path that I took to get there. And I also wanted to touch on what Rebecca said about, doing all the different fields of law. You know, and I don't know if it's a generational thing or a man thing, but something I noticed that when I was finishing up law school was that I don't think the general practitioner is feasible going forward. Someone who does criminal defense, family law, wills and trusts, civil. I mean, you wouldn't expect your doctor to know to be an OBGYN, to be a foot doctor, to be a heart surgeon. You wouldn't expect them to be all those different things. And I don't think you can be an expert in all those different fields. And so I think I decided early on that I was going to pick one thing and be really, really good at that one thing. Whether, I thought it'd be family law, it turned out being criminal law. And so, and I think the state of the practice has reflected that you really don't see those general practitioners anymore. And I think it's important to focus your practice on, one or two, three at the most closely related fields. My thing is criminal defense, white collar, government investigations, and I do appellate work. And so I don't think, because people have asked me, oh, can you do this? Can you handle a divorce? And I just refer that stuff out. I think it's a sign of confidence in yourself to say, I don't know how to do this, and I'm going to send you to someone who can. And it takes confidence to say, I don't know. I say I don't know all the time because I think it shows honesty and it shows that like you're not afraid to say, I don't know, but this person will.
Yeah, Rachel, I think that's a huge point. First, know that there are so many other areas of law than what you think there is as you are in law school. Like, I meet someone, I feel like every week that I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? Space law, who knew? Not me. But so you just know that you're not tied to like whatever you told your second cousin at the reunion that what type of law you were gonna do. do whatever you feel like is best. And you might fall into that area as well, like I did. I didn't intend to do marketing law. I wanted to do IP. And then a couple years ago, I went through like a little bit of a crisis of, is this all I'm going to be, just marketing? And so I wanted to expand my area of expertise. So if you do want to do that, you want to move into a new area, it's important to find someone who can help guide you and teach you what you need to know in that space, an expert in their field that can help pass on that knowledge. And so that's one way that you could, sort of venture out of that one area. But it's with guidance and learning. It's just not, I'm going to become a space lawyer now. I can't just switch, and that's part of what Rachel was saying. I do have one thing that I would change. This is part of the job hunt. I would cast a wide net. For me, being not someone from Michigan, I was like, I'm Detroit or Chicago, and that's it. And I didn't apply anywhere else because I didn't know what Grand Rapids was. If I had known, I would have applied to tons of jobs here too. And I'm glad I ended up here. But try not to be tied too closely to like a city or a particular firm or anything like that. As you're going through OCIs or other job application processes, just apply everywhere. You don't know where you're going to end up, and you can always choose later where you want to be. But don't miss opportunities now.
Yeah, on the note of missed opportunities, going into law school, I didn't have any family or friends or anybody who made it to law school. So once I actually got there, it was kind of a on my own sort of thing. And something that I wish I knew, but I also want to do more going forward is to interact more with the different organizations and associations that we have available here in Michigan. You know, in my first year, I didn't really know about the Women's Law Association. I didn't know about the Albanian American Bar Association. I didn't know about these different associations that have these different communities and different resources and different events. And it's something that I think moving forward, I would like to take advantage of because you meet all kinds of different people with all kinds of different backgrounds, different practices, things like Nerissa said that you had never heard of before that you can learn from other people. So I feel like taking advantage of the community because there is a community out there and it's just like waiting for you, to become a part of it. So I think that's my one. I wish I did before and I'm definitely going to do more later. So
Well, I thought I was going to have to make a plug for joining the Women Lawyers Association of Michigan, but it sounds to me like everybody just did, especially Alexa. So thank you for that. And as the co-chair of or the chair, whatever my title is, of the membership committee this year, I highly encourage you to join. It's been very rewarding and very exciting getting to know all of our members, especially in the capacity as the membership chair. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them while we're here or after. I'll dump my email in the chat and anybody can ask them. So I want to wrap up with one last question, which is, how has mentorship played a role in your career? And if it hasn't, which I doubt, what are you doing now in order to be a mentor to somebody else moving forward?
I'll start because it took me a long time to find a mentor, like somebody that I wanted to be, a woman that I wanted to be like. I had male mentors that helped me, when I was at a law firm. But I needed to find somebody that I wanted to be like. And it also has to be somebody that's committed to that, committed to that mentor-mentee relationship that does take time. It's worth finding someone. It's a safe space to talk and say, I think I committed malpractice. And then you talk it through and they say, no, you didn't, but it's a safe space. And by the way, if you feel like you did, run, don't walk to the management at your firm or company where you work. But that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think it's especially important, not even necessarily to have a mentor saying, here's how you're going to practice law, but even just like someone who's been in the game for a while and can tell you like, here's how you interact with people. Here are the unwritten rules. Here are the politics you need to be aware of. Because those are the things like I feel like I'm still kind of like, okay, is this okay? Is this okay? If I do this, is it going to offend this group? And so like I guess like I was not prepared for how political um like the practice of law is. So it's stuff like that because stuff sometimes still like so unsure. So I think that's really important. Um, and the past few years, I've really tried to like seek out young female law students, especially those who are interested in going into the criminal field, just to emphasize the importance of, the things that I'm still learning to do. Be yourself, be competent, be prepared. Um, don't feel like you have to be someone you're not. If you're funny and goofy, let that come through a little bit. I make jokes at myself during trial. Sometimes the jury laughs at them. Most of the time they don't. And I try really hard not to take that personally. But like that's the kind of person I am, and I hope that like I think the more of you that comes across, the better. Unless you're a huge jerk, in which case, like maybe hide that a little bit. But most women aren't. So yeah, just like the importance of like it's just so important to be yourself. Like you don't need to be whatever overly tough or overly strong or overly brusque. Like you can totally be warm. You can be warm and fun, and those kind of like adjectives that we associate with being a woman, warm, soft, nurturing, those can totally come into your practice in a way that I think is, advantageous.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I definitely agree about the politics thing. I didn't think that I would have to navigate corporate politics, but here we are. So having like a mentor to help do that is really helpful. I think there is like this formal mentorship and then informal mentorship, right? So you might have people around you that you look up to who you feel comfortable asking questions that might be more informal. There's more senior attorney at my office, and she's a few years older and she's got kids and stuff, and she's been at the company a little bit longer and she's in a higher role. So she's a really good person for advice on like how should I tell my direct report this thing, or how should I approach this weird thing that's going on in this life or in my personal life too, right? Versus my boss, that's more of a more formal mentorship role when he's very proactive as a mentor. And I would say that that's very rare. A mentor is not going to know that you want them to mentor you unless you talk to them about it. And the mentorship really, the value of it comes from the mentee. So asking the questions, people don't generally just like willy-nilly provide advice that is super helpful. You have to ask for it. This is my problem. This is what I need help with. And I think the last thing I'll say on that is a mentor can come from anywhere. So one thing for me is I was really hesitant to go out to events and things like that, especially as a new lawyer during COVID. It's like, oh, I don't want to like go to this weird virtual thing. So first of all, kudos to all of you for coming to this, because I don't know that I would have if I was in your spot. But like the events are out there. Just try to go to like one every couple months at least to get used to meeting people, because you might meet someone who's going to become your mentor or a friend, even just a friend. Those are great. Building community is part of what you need as a lawyer.
And if I could piggyback on that to shout from the rooftops, join organizations, whether it is women lawyers, whether it's the Federal Bar Association, of which I happen to be an officer, and we always love new members. So just stuff like that, because if you stay, like let's say you're at a firm and you just stay in your little bubble of your firm and you stay with all the other, first years, no one's going to know who you are. And there might be a time when you need to network outside your firm. And so it is so, so, so important. If you don't do anything else your first couple years of practice, other than, do your job well, but join some kind of organization.
I would totally agree with that. You will get more opportunities through those organizations, which are often looking for content or speakers. But what I would say is sometimes people will say, okay, I'm going to join 10 organizations and I'm going to volunteer for everything. Join one and get into it and you live up to your word, and whatever you say you're going to do it. The other thing I would say is networking events are wonderful, but a lot of times, like, students say, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what kind of questions to ask. Well, it's spring. So what's a good question to ask? So do you have any summer vacations planned? Or if you're in the Metro Detroit area, it was 50 degrees yesterday and then we had an ice storm, but having a couple questions ready in your mind to ask people when you meet is really going to serve you well, because you have to take the initiative. And that's hard. You go to those networking events and there's a circle of people and you don't know anyone, walk up to the circle and put your head in and say hi. And that's how you really get started. It's not easy, but it will serve you well.
I definitely agree with that. And I agree with the, whole point that you can find a mentor anywhere. So I had never considered bankruptcy in my life. Didn't even know what it was. I just knew what I heard from TV and movies and stuff like that. But I ended up getting an opportunity to intern my 2L summer. And I was like, you know what? This is a court opportunity. I don't know what bankruptcy is, but I'm going to take it. And I ended up loving it. And through that, internship, there were different luncheons that they had where attorneys would come, and there were different sort of events that they hosted, fundraisers. There's a certain charity that's called Access to Bankruptcy Court that helps people, with their cases. So I ended up putting myself out there, and that's how I found my mentors. So the idea of not limiting yourself to your study group from 1L or from your first year, associates from your firm, and putting yourself out there to meet those different people. It is hard. It's way easier said than done, but it makes so much of a difference. And I know for a fact that I would not be here where I am today at this federal clerkship without mentoring and networking. So it's huge.
Well, I want to give our attendees a little bit of time to ask some questions if they like. Through the chat, if you want to send them in, I will ask them for you. In the meantime, as you're typing away, typing away, I'm going to share the information for our 107th annual meeting, which is happening this not this Saturday, but this upcoming April 26th, which is a Saturday. And we'd love for you to join us. I know we've been talking a lot about camaraderie and community and authentic leadership and what that looks like and being true to yourself. And that's the exact theme that we have for our annual meeting this year. It is in Clinton Township, Michigan at the Italian American Cultural Center. The theme is Come As You Are to the Table. There's a seat for you. We want you to come as yourself, and we'd love for you to join. I put the link to register. We hope that we can see you there. There is pretty much an all day of programming and then a special members only event later in the evening with some excellent entertainment. So please click the link to find out more. If you're interested in joining, if you have any questions, I dumped my email in the chat as well. Feel free to reach out to me anytime before, during, or after this event. And we can go from there. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? Anybody wants to come off mute, you can do that too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Belinda. I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and sharing all like your insights and experiences. Um, Mine is not like a question per se. It's just I wanted to ask Alexa if I can have her contact information. I really enjoyed hearing you speak and some of the things that you said about like speaking to yourself, how you speak to your friends. And I would greatly appreciate you being my mentor.
Yes, I'll put my email in the chat, but you can also connect with me on LinkedIn and we can go from there if you want to chat.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I know people are thinking of questions, but I want to give a little bit more about what I would do differently because I'm a worrier and I get things done. But one thing I learned by age 50, and then I perfected it by age 55, and I won't tell you how old I am now, but old, oldest person here. Live in the moment. So I was a trial lawyer. And when I was in trial, that was the only moment. And people that knew me don't talk to me when I'm in trial, but sometimes on the weekend during a trial, there might be an event or family, something to go and not worry and just live in the moment and enjoy the fact that you're there instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I got to do this, this, and this tomorrow. And it's not even tomorrow. So if I could go back, I would get a lot of good quality time where I was just focused on what I was doing and enjoying and not worrying about what I had to do next.
Anybody else? Okay, anybody have any last thoughts? Thank you, Rebecca, for sharing that one as well.
If I could just share that, um, like there is a certain, I've found a certain camaraderie amongst female lawyers, especially when you're in one of those fields that's very male dominated. And it might take a while, but like find your people. Like in general, like women are so good at supporting one another. I mean, like my closest colleagues and friends, like we have competed for the same things. Um, and it's truly just like it's just like I mean, it sounds really corny to say a sisterhood. But like it's there can be a world in which women aren't competing with each other. There's enough success to go around. And I think something that's really important to remember is that, the other women in your life who might be going for the same opportunities that you are, they're not the enemy. They're in 5 or 10 years, they're going to be the ones sending you referrals and back and forth. And so I think it's so important to find your people, for moral support, to refer that family law case to that you might not want. And so I think it's so, so important, to be yourself and find your people and don't lose sight of who you are. I mean, like it's like, it can be fun to be the gunner or the shark in law school, but nobody likes that person in real life. We're all just doing a job and we're trying to, I think make a little bit of difference in the world. And ultimately, what you do in your career doesn't define you. Like, if someone tells me 3 things about yourself, the first thing is not I'm a lawyer. It's that, you know, like I'm a dog mom, I'm a wife, and I really love to do Pilates and I'm great at baking. And the fact that I'm a lawyer is kind of like further down on that list because it's really just like it's a thing you're good at, but it doesn't need to define you. And I think that's like, I never want to be that like 85-year-old attorney who can't let go and can't retire because I don't have anything going on, or like this is the only thing that I have going on. It's like I hit 60, I'm done. Like I'm gonna go out on a boat. So that's a long roundabout way of saying, you know, keep everything in perspective. Be yourself and find your people.
Yeah, I fully agree. Sort of exactly what Rachel and Rebecca have been saying. You are more than just a lawyer. There are other things about you that are fun and cool and that you like. And so when you're thinking about trying to build community, build it also outside of your profession, right? I'm a huge theater kid. I founded the law school theater review at MSU because I was disappointed that it wasn't one that didn't exist. And now I'm on the board for the Civic Theater in Grand Rapids, and I found a community there as well, right? And that's fun. And I do still have to be a lawyer sometimes in that role, but it is not the primary thing about me in that space. So just get involved outside of the profession within your community, whether it's your church or, you know, a theater thing or another charity or something like that. Because you cannot always be thinking about your job. You have to have something outside of that. And even something like outside of your family, right? And your friends, something that's just for you, that gives you some other type of happiness than just your profession.
I would say that a lot of great advice has been given. And you know, one comment that was made earlier, I think Rachel made it, if you're doing something that you don't like, get out of it. And one of the things, I'll have students that'll spend their whole life dreaming of working in the prosecutor's office, and then they do a prosecutorial externship and they might not like it. It might not be for them and they're devastated. And I say, no, this is a good time to find that out. But what Rachel said, and I did family law, and a lot of people wind up dabbling a little bit in family law. I kind of liked it, but it wasn't my area of expertise. I was just, my law firm was bringing these cases to me from their own existing clients. But if you're doing something that you don't like, make a plan. Don't quit a job, make a plan and execute it. Maybe you're going to make a plan to save some money to go get ICL training and network in that other arena that you're looking for. But if you stay in an area of law that you hate, you'll be miserable. And like, I love that Alex is saying she loves bankruptcy law. She found her area, and there's so much, right? So you don't have to be stuck in something that you really don't like. So follow your passion, and that will serve you well.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists for such great advice and insight today. It's given me several things to think about over this this evening and this upcoming weekend. I also wanted to highlight our event coordinators, Julianne Pastula, Natasha Rao, and Laura Helderop. Without their assistance, we could not have done this event without them. So thank you very much. And like I said, if you have any membership questions for the Women Lawyers Association of Michigan, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are always looking for new members. And like I said, please join us at our annual meeting. Thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your night.